First of all, we need to explain what's the connection between the wisdom of Kabbalah and philosophy. Philosophy is, in essence, teaches us about life, the essence of life, the goal of life, the purpose of life. Philosophy is, in general, it's as if a general wisdom. Philosophy is not considered a science because we learn this out of the investigation of a person and the reality he's in. And here there's a problem, because if we look at what's going on in a person, we can't use science because you can't measure things. We don't have in this very clear ideas that can be as facts. We can study on the level of still, vegetative, and animal, because from the degree of speaking we can, on the lower degrees, to investigate them, to study them, to see them inwards. Meaning we can feel supposedly as if we raise them in our head and to investigate. We can understand them, we can lower ourselves to them. Also about our body we can do that, because our body is animate. But the person in us, the human in us, we cannot investigate in a precise manner. We feel all sorts of phenomena in us. We want to arrange these phenomena, these impressions, these expressions, and these thoughts and desires, and we want to arrange it according to a science, but it doesn't really work. Why? Because it's at the same degree. I can learn what's below me, but not at the degree where I am myself. And therefore, here's the problem. Although all of science started from the approach of a person towards himself and to life, and it's a fact that today also, if you're a doctor of physics or mathematics or something like that, they write PhD, which is a philosophy doctor, basically. Yeah, philosophy and doctor. Although it has nothing to do with philosophy, that you're totally in physics or in chemistry or in pedagogics or something else. That's how it's called, because the general approach towards me and reality is called philosophy. And truly, Roichin talks about this, about the fact that the word philosophy comes from the wisdom of Kabbalah. Please.
Yes, Johannes Rochlin, he was a humanist and a researcher, German researcher, and he was the personal advisor of the Caesar of Germany. Yeah, he lived
the 16th century.
Yeah, he lived around that time. He was also one of the greatest experts of ancient languages, and he researched their origins. And he said the following. He said, "My teacher, Pythagoras, the father of philosophy, most probably got his wisdom from the Jews and not from the Greek. And he is the first who translated the word Kabbalah that was not known to the people of the generation. He translated the word philosophy." And he also said that the philosophy of Pythagoras stemmed directly from the endless sea of Kabbalah. And he said is another place that the wisdom of Kabbalah does not leave us to live our life in dust, but it leads us to the peak.
Well, the truth is that philosophers would like to say that they, till this day, I mean, if we want to learn Kabbalah even, then we need to enter the faculty of philosophy in the universities. We see there's no other choice. Me too, my doctorate I did in the institute in France, the Institute of Philosophy, and of the Academy for Sciences. And let's say my daughter, who studied Kabbalah, she studied in the faculty for philosophy. There's nothing we can do about that. Still, the world thinks that Kabbalah is part of philosophy, even though the true philosophers say that it's otherwise. But no matter what, there's a lot more to talk about, and we'll talk about the connections, but it's interesting that the connection between the wisdom of Kabbalah and philosophy is that it's philosophia, as it's called, is not that now the world is thinking about philosophy and it's justified that to be a philosopher today is just they're just going to study in order to get some diploma to say I've had higher education of some sort. But philosophy that we're talking about when we're talking about wisdom, Kabbalah, and what Baal HaSulam is saying here is the perception of the world. It's the observation of the world. It's the paradigm. Either this or that, or this way or that way, and we're kind of mixing between these approaches. What's truly valuable to us and what's not, and how much these observations of a person on the world, about life, about himself, change, and how the wisdom of Kabbalah in the end rises and is revealed specifically through philosophy. Just like it is revealed after religions that they come afterward. And for the time being, it was concealed within religions so that humanity will grow and develop. Thus, it was revealed after the religions, thus it's after all the sciences, even though it gave birth to all the sciences and philosophy. In the end, when we come to a crisis, it is revealed after them, and then it becomes the only approach for a person and for life, and replaces, because it includes all of them. Please.
The wisdom of Kabbalah and philosophy. On page 99, Kabbalah for the student. What is spirituality? Philosophy has gone through a great deal of trouble to prove that corporeality is the offspring of spirituality, and that the soul begets the body. Still, their words are unacceptable to the heart in any manner.
Here it's really important, and reminding you, don't look at philosophy like some discipline, how should we say, some profession that we study in the university. This is the observation of a person and life. Therefore, here in this scrutiny and this critique of how we as regular people are looking at life, if it's without the wisdom of Kabbalah. Okay? So each of us within is a philosopher.
Their primary mistake is their erroneous perception of spirituality. They determined that
also the philosophers say that the approach of a person is that he can differentiate corporeality from spirituality, and to think about spirituality separately and corporality separately, and in his mind and in his sensations and feelings, he can investigate and truly travel between these worlds.
Any parent must somehow resemble its progeny. The relation is the path and the route by which its sequel extends. In addition, every operator must have some regard to its operation by which to contact it. Since you say that spirituality is denied of any corporeal incidents, then such a path does not exist, or a relation by which the spiritual can contact and set it into any kind of motion. However, understanding the meaning of the word spirituality has nothing to do with philosophy. This is because how can they discuss something that they have never seen or felt? What do their rudiments stand on? If there is any definition that can tell spiritual from corporeal, it belongs only to those who have attained a spiritual thing and felt it. These are the genuine Kabbalists. Thus, it is the wisdom of Kabbalah that we need.
Meaning, if you investigate this world through your senses, and the same thing that is revealed, that same reality that's revealed in your senses, you reveal a certain reality in your five senses. And more with the additional instruments that you develop there, and so forth, telescopes and so forth. What do you discover? You discover things that are real. I discovered in my senses. Come and look in the microscope and you see the same like me. It's a fact. That's it. We discovered a certain phenomena. We can do it again, repeat it, and as long as we grasped it, that's a fact. And this from all these facts, we gather all these facts after facts after facts. And from this, we have science. We have certain materials, matter, with physics and so forth. Chemistry, it's already the composition between the different molecules, and so forth. So from what we study, that's within our five senses, spirituality, we define it that it's not in our senses at all. So if it's not in our senses, I cannot investigate, I cannot study it. I can only depict to myself, imagine myself what it could be, and then I am totally disconnected from the realistic study of it. And in that, I'm already without any direction. Therefore, and this is what we see in philosophy, that there are no facts. And therefore, nothing is measurable without any precise definition. It's like psychology that belongs also to, in many ways, towards philosophy and vice versa. Meaning, whoever is not capable of discovering or revealing the spiritual world, it's as if he cannot be a true philosopher. Philosophy is, if we're talking about the science of the whole reality and the attitude of a person, the relations of the person with the whole reality, then that's the wisdom of Kabbalah. If you study this in a way that you're doing that with your senses where you are, just like the conditions in the wisdom of Kabbalah, whatever we don't attain, we won't know it by a name or by a word. It doesn't matter what world I'm talking about or what I'm relating to. If I attain it, and the attainment is the most clear scrutiny and discernment of it, of what's in me, in my feeling, in my mind, in my perception, then it's called the wisdom of Kabbalah. If you're relating to reality without attaining it in actuality, rather to just talk about it, this is called philosophy. This means we have two approaches of a person who is in this world towards the reality. If it's without attaining spirituality, but to talk about it, it's philosophy. If we're going to attain spirituality, and to the degree that you attain, only in that to that degree, you talk about it, then that's called the wisdom of Kabbalah. Clear? So therefore, the wisdom of Kabbalah is a universal wisdom that doesn't talk about the external perception that a person perceives, rather only in accordance to the person himself. What degree he's in, what he perceives. And then it talks about the impressions within the five senses, because there are endless impressions that we can talk about this we can't talk about this in science. Rather, science talks about foundations. What I change in me, in my foundations, which is my feelings and my mind, and mind and heart, and according to that, how I perceive my reality within my mind and my feelings. And of course, reality is in relativity to me. There's nothing absolute, other than the upper force, which is outside of me. Therefore, it's called upper. What is it? I don't know. Only the forces according towards my senses. And here is the main problem between the wisdom of Kabbalah and philosophy, that the first philosophers were aware, those that were big in philosophy were aware of this perception, this incidental, narrow perception of philosophy. If you don't receive the or accept the person himself as part of the changes. But most of the regular modern philosophies, especially the modern ones, in the descent of the generations, don't reach these depths. They simply study different sources of philosophy, and this is how they advance in all sorts of their works. They write and write all the time, books from study, and they rely on each other. He wrote this and that, so therefore it's the truth. That's how it is with them. Not that they reveal something on their own or make themselves as a vessel of study of nature. And from studying that, studying nature and writing, that each philosopher is a revealer of reality. Rather, it's all coming from contemplations, and each writing from different compilations of different books that he read and so forth. And this is the big difference between philosophy and Kabbalah, that already from those times that the philosophers stopped to accept themselves. Meaning they accepted that the person we don't change, not the way they learned from the Kabbalists, that the main thing is the change in the person. And from the change of the person, you investigate, you study reality. And from that, we get all the Partzufim, the worlds, and all this Sfirot, and everything that Kabbalists write from the changes that occur in them. What we don't reveal, we don't know it in a name or in a word. Because attainment is considered the most deepest understanding that there is within the vessel. Therefore, what comes out is that since then, the philosophy actually disconnected from Kabbalah, and the wisdom of Kabbalah continued in its path. That everything depends on a person, that a person who feels, and we're not allowed to talk about something that's disconnected from a person, which exists that way in nature. And philosophers accepted it this way. They say, well, he felt this way, I feel this way. Yeah, you see, this is green, and he says it's green. The sun, and he sees that it's sun. So there's no changes here. And thus, philosophy developed until the approach of what we call Newton's days. That what's in a person and what we feel in a person also, that's how it happens on us. Until they developed more and more, and they saw anyhow that there are certain clashes within the perception, and also a problem with they're kind of advancing towards the method of Einstein, where it has to do with the observer and where he is relative to what he's observing, and in accordance there are already changes. Meaning, it's important to us to know. For us to know also who the observer is, and in quantum physics we see already that a person who observes or is actually making changes on the particles there, and we can't say that this is how the process would have happened if he wouldn't look, or whether he would look. To the degree that we're already starting to get close to the boundary, to the barrier of exiting philosophy towards Kabbalah, that we're truly saying that the person, in his observation, by him existing, by him thinking about the reality, he's actually really changing the reality. Even they say that I looked at some telescope on some stars or some part in the space, that area is already changing and so forth. And this is said by people. It's not out of like some beliefs in divinity or in something that they read in Kabbalah. Rather, they have something to rely on in this assumption. So anyhow, after we went through so many confusions with philosophy, and its perception and its attitude towards the world, that it brought us to thousands of years of the wrong development. That actually we needed to develop according to the wisdom of Kabbalah in a simple manner. The problem was only that towards philosophy, philosophy was strengthened by our ego more, because it's comfortable for a person and it's good. I don't change. I am how I am. The whole world can change except for me. The world is not a result of me, and that I changed, and because of that the world changed. It just exists the way it exists, and I am in it or I'm not in it. The world will continue to exist. This is called an objective, supposedly, perception. And in the end, we see that after thousands of years of these confusions, even though we're used to them and it's comfortable for us egoistically to think this way, and anyhow, without the integral education, this is how you perceive life. But this approach is a false approach. And nature is revealing to us that anyhow, Kabbalah is correct, and we are once again reaching that perception of reality, and all of philosophy has gone bankrupt, and because of its approach, especially because of its approach towards the perception of reality. Then after Einstein came, after him several other researchers that got the scientific study closer to research towards Kabbalah, and thus today we can talk about their Kabbalistic perception of reality with an open, in an open manner, and there's no one who's going to laugh or someone who will think that it's some imagination, mysticism, or something like that, because even scientists now have revealed this and reached this. This is on the side of science. And on the other hand, what he writes also about psychology, that it too, after it worked on a person and wanted to create a certain order, meaning not about the external perception of reality, but about the perception of a person, it too revealed that in a regular manner we cannot study the reality in a person. Rather, we need to know about the changes that are occurring inside a person, and we're incapable of knowing those unless we exit a person, because everything we study, we need to study from the outside, so that there will be a difference between who's studying and what he's studying. Object and subject. And therefore, psychology too, although it's already for dozens of years and going bankrupt, I mean, all in all, it only exists about 100 years. Because we have been advancing to the correction of the soul in the last generation, then psychology developed, especially Freud, and the beginning of the 20th century. And it says also that we must study the person in order to know about the perception of his world and who he is. And for this too, we need the wisdom of Kabbalah, because it helps us to exit from a person and to study him from the outside, and that he identifies himself with the point in the heart. If so, then he can research all his attributes, both corporeal, physical ones, bodily ones, we can say, and we can see that from the perception of reality, the external one, which is philosophy, and the internal one, that is psychology, we come to the Kabbalistic perception, and therefore we study as the one true one. Okay, some other sentences maybe?
Yeah, there's Kurt Sprengler, lived in the 18th century. He was a doctor and a botanist from Germany. He says the first person knew Kabbalah. He knew the imprint of all matters, and therefore he gave the animals their proper names, which resemble their true nature. Another one, Ludus Remondus, lived in the 13th century, was a poet and philosopher, was a leading researcher in the field of Kabbalah and Islam. He writes, as in theology, sciences and mathematics, they all receive their roots from the wisdom of Kabbalah. Therefore, these wisdoms are inferior to Kabbalah, and therefore their proof lacks without the wisdom of Kabbalah. Another one, Friedrich Schlegel, he was a German poet, philosopher. He writes, the true beauty is only the Kabbalah. We also have Johann Wolfgang, lived in the 18th century, was a poet, a scientist, philosopher. He writes, the Kabbalistic approach to the Bible is the only approach that is in one line with the infinite, endless happiness in its total wisdom.
Meaning we also see that all the researchers and the thinkers, as they talk about the internal form of the perception of reality, they see that especially the approach, as much as they understand in Kabbalah, of course not. They weren't in attaining anything. They weren't under attainment, but they understood that this approach in the change of a person to see how reality changes is the true and scientific approach. And this actually is what moved them.